Thank you for tuning into the Short Stacks. I'm Lisa Quintero, young adult librarian.
And I'm Nick Barron, patron and sometimes volunteer.
This is a show where we talk to you about what we've been reading, listening to, or watching. But first,
Library news.
So we've got several different things coming up in the next couple of weeks. On Monday, March 29th, we have Tinker Lab To Go edition. That will be a gardening kit. You can plant some of your own herbs. And then on March 31st, we have Art Cart To Go. The following week, on April 1st, there will be a story time online with Miss Heidi and the special guest Winnie the Pooh. There will be some other surprise guests as well, and some of your favorite stories and rhymes. And that will be from 9 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. On Easter Sunday, April 4th, we will be closed. And then on Tuesday, April 6th, there will be a Rhyme Time Tuesday from 9 a.m. to 9:15 a.m. with Miss Heidi. And those you can find the links for on our calendar at shorewoodlibrary.org if you want to join in on those. On Wednesday, April 7th, there will be another Art Cart To Go. And that evening, there will be a PM book club with Haley. The Disappearing Earth by Julia Phillips is the book. Do you want to read the description?
I will. One August afternoon, on the shoreline of the Kamchatka Peninsula at the northeastern edge of Russia, two sisters, 8 and 11, go missing. In the ensuing months, the police investigation turns up nothing. Echoes of the disappearance reverberate across a tightly woven community, with the fear and loss felt most deeply among its women. Connected by a crime, a witness, a neighbor, a detective, a mother. Social and ethnic tensions have long simmered in the region, and outsiders are often the first to be accused.
Sounds like an intriguing mystery.
Yep.
So join Haley for that on Wednesday, April 7th from 7 p.m. It will be to 8 p.m. It'll be on Zoom, and the link for that is also on the calendar.
And for those that are wondering about where the Kamchatka Peninsula is in the northeastern edge of Russia, if you've ever played the board game Risk, it is one of the territories. It is in the obviously northeastern edge of Russia, and it connects to Alaska as far as, crossing the Risk map. So for you board gamers out there you go.
All right, I did not know that.
No.
So let's go to From the Stacks. So last time we, which was actually more than a couple weeks ago because we do this every other week, but we were on vacation, so we skipped a week. Last time we had our podcast, we talked about doing a genre dive. Nick had assigned me Trip Hop to listen to, and I had assigned him a mystery novel to read. And we let each other pick out what we wanted to listen to or read within the parameters that we gave each other. But it turns out that it's taking a little bit longer than we thought it would take to get through stuff, since it's not genres that we would normally listen to or read. And then on top of it, we were on vacation. We went to Arches National Park.
Yeah, we went to Arches National Park, and it was gorgeous. The things that we saw were fantastic. We're going to talk about that in another episode, so we won't get too into it. But what else happened while we were making that journey?
I don't know what happened while we were making it. I don't know what you're referring to. A lot of things happened while you were making that journey.
The route back from Arches National Park was going to go through Denver, Colorado, because you take Route 70 up back to Milwaukee, and it was going to take us straight through the big storm of the century that was supposed to happen in Colorado.
Yeah, they got like 3 or 4 feet of snow or something, and we were supposed to come back through that. And so we decided that instead of coming back through that, we would veer south. And so I ended up seeing a bunch of states that I have never seen before, like New Mexico, and where else did we go? I had been to Texas before, but
Texas,
we went to Oklahoma. Yeah, we went through a whole bunch.
We tried to go to Four Corners.
That's true. We did try to go to Four Corners, but it was closed because of COVID. Which is fine. We will go again someday. For those who don't know, Four Corners is where Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, and Arizona all meet, and you can actually, I guess, stand on the spot where all 4 states meet. But that it's like an attraction that is run by I believe it's the Navajo community, and since their community has been very hard hit by COVID, it was shut down, which makes sense.
Yeah, it was even though we didn't get to go stand at the Four Corners, it was neat passing through 4 states in the span of like
15 minutes.
less than 15 minutes.
That was very cool. All right, so instead of that, we are going to be talking about how recommendations work today, how librarians recommend stuff to patrons, and how we also take patron recommendations for stuff that we should read. So Nick had some questions for me. Go ahead.
What prompted this was actually that one of Lisa's regular patrons has recommended a number of things for us to watch. And
Mhm.
it got me thinking about the reciprocal relationship between librarians and their patrons. Obviously it is the librarian's job to make recommendations, but it's important that they listen to their patrons and find out what their patrons are excited about and what they want.
Mhm. For
Um,
sure.
so, how do librarians recommend books, and is there training involved in what you do as far as recommending books?
So yeah, there is training. We call it reader's advisory. It's a very jargony term, which basically means, we're advising readers on what to read. But book recommendations.
It sounds like the explicit lyrics warning on a record, but
Yes.
continue. Reader's advisory.
Parental advisory. Yes. No. It is. Helping people find stuff that they want to read. And yeah, I know I personally took a class on it in library school, and it was required at the library school that I went to for my master's program. And most public libraries require that their librarians have a master's degree, and so most of us have some form of this training. I know that, some of my colleagues have also received readers advisory training through school, and then there's also, workshops that happen at conferences and things if you didn't get a chance to do that while you were in school. But luckily, my school required it because, it's kind of one of the foundational things of a public librarianship. I mean, one of the things that people come in for the most is for recommendations. A lot of people browse the stacks, but a lot of people want things that fall within their interests, which makes sense, and as a librarian, you can't read every single book in the library. It's impossible. And you have your own interests, but we are taught questions to ask to find out what exactly it is that you like about a book and to help you find other books like it.
So answer this for me.
Mhm.
So I know that you were a bookstore employee before you became a librarian, and you obviously had to make recommendations when you were a employee.
Mhm.
So tell me about the I guess the difference in the mindset between what you thought about then versus now.
So then it was about selling books. And I had a vague idea of how to recommend something because back then I would just think about the things that I liked to read, and um, we would kind of approach it like Lisa likes to read science fiction. So if you get a customer that is looking for science fiction, my coworker would be like, "Here, go to Lisa," or like we had I love graphic novels, but at the time I didn't read as many graphic novels as I do now. And so we had this guy Mark who worked with me, and like if you liked graphic novels and you wanted graphic novel recommendations, you took somebody to Mark if he was around. And so the idea then was to sell books and to upsell people. So you would be like, this is a book that you might like. And if you don't like that one, here's this one, this one, this one, and this one that you might like too. And
And please walk out with all of them.
and please walk out with all of them. And I always felt kinda icky doing that because, like, I love books. I love recommending books, but, like, I'm not big into capitalism and, like, forcing people to pay for things. And one of the things that I worked for Barnes& and Noble, one of the things that they made us push a lot was selling memberships. And, a lot of people are just coming in and the membership, like, for some people, it made sense, and for some people, I would try to push it because 'cause I'd be like, "Okay, if you're in here all the time, you spend X amount of money on books, this is actually gonna save you money." But for most people, they're out 25 bucks that, like, that's not gonna really benefit them at all.
Mhm.
Um, and so, yeah, I didn't like that aspect of it, but I have always enjoyed talking to people about books and recommending things. And so the difference between that and being a librarian is that I don't feel icky upselling people on books. I still upsell people on books. Sometimes I try not to overwhelm people. I do this especially with like the kids and the teens, because a lot of times kids and teens don't necessarily seem to know what it is that they like about a book. I ask them all the questions that we are trained to ask. And sometimes I think they do know, but sometimes I feel like they feel uncomfortable if their parent is around sharing what it is that they like because sometimes you can tell that there's like, a judgy relationship where like somebody's like, if your kid likes sci-fi and your parent doesn't want you to read sci-fi because they think it's garbage, or if your kid likes graphic novels and the parent doesn't want them to read graphic novels because again they think it's garbage or whatever, and so you can tell sometimes that the kids like and sometimes especially like middle schoolers, you ask them a question, they're like they shrug their shoulders and they're like I don't know because I think that's just it's intimidating talking to an adult about something.
I'm gonna go on a quick tangent for all the parents out there.
Uh-huh.
So I've said this in a previous episode, but I was the kid that was in the lowest reading group in second grade, and almost failed second grade because I didn't care about reading. And then in third grade, I found Dungeons and Dragons,
Uh-huh.
and then every C.S. Lewis, every Tolkien book, I devoured it all because there was that moment where, even though it was fantasy stuff, I fell in love with reading, even though it wasn't necessarily what some parents would want me to read,
Hmm.
but it was the thing that I was interested in, and I went from going in the lowest reading group to the highest reading group, by the end of elementary school. So it's very important to let your kids follow their passions in terms of what they read. That's my PSA.
Yeah, and one thing that we're taught, and one thing that is important to remember as a librarian, is that like everybody reads for different reasons. Every book is read by a different person in a different way. So like what you get out of a book is not the same thing that somebody else gets out of a book. Some people read for escapism. Some people read to learn more. Some people read, to see things through a different lens. Some people read because they want to solve a mystery. Some people read just because they like a good story with, solid characters. So people have a variety of reasons for why they read for pleasure. And a lot of it is learning not to yuck someone's yum, basically. Um, I personally am not a huge fan of certain genres of books, but if other people like them, that's cool. Like, like what you like. I mean, I know people judge me for reading a bunch of the stuff that I read, and I don't care because like it's what I like to read and I have my reasons for reading it. And yes, I read all 3 Twilight books. Are they garbage? Yes. Do I know this? Yes. Did I enjoy them? Yes. Sometimes you just need escapist, stupid, whatever. um
And anybody that's wondering, she's Team Jacob. Just getting that out there.
So yeah, so when a person comes up to us, a lot of it's a dialogue between the librarian and the patron. Um, there's a lot of questions that are asked back and forth. And so sometimes I think, it's interesting because sometimes some people I think get frustrated by all the questions that I ask them. But the questions that I'm asking you, if you come in for a book recommendation, I'm asking you because it's how I know how to help you. And there are a variety of things that appeal to different people, and not everybody is the same. So I will ask you about, what genre you're looking for, or if a lot of people, a lot of adults already come knowing what genre they want or what author they like, or what they like about books. But if you're somebody who is like, I don't know, like I just want a good book to read, that's hard because there's so many good books to read. So I'll ask you about genre. I'll ask you about topics that you might want to read about. I'll ask you about the setting, whether you have a certain particular place, whether it's like the Midwest or you like Europe, also setting in terms of time. So, do you want something that's taking place right now in the future? Do you want something that took place in medieval times, or some of it's like style. So like I will ask you if you're asking for nonfiction, if you want like something that's narrative nonfiction versus something that's, just a bunch of like bullet points versus something that's more like a textbook. Um, Also things like novels and verse are things that are a style that's very popular in young adult and children's fiction right now. So like, do you want a novel in verse? Do you want a regular novel? Um, Also, do you want, like, something that's told in first person versus something that's told in third person, or, so there's different things that appeal to different people.
Mm-hmm.
Also one thing that some people, will come up to me too is their preferences in terms of whether a book, has sex in it or has a lot of cursing or has a lot of violence. And so those are things to also know about books. And we as librarians have various tools that we look at to suss that information out and be able to recommend things to you. Part of it is stuff that we have read ourselves. But like I said, we can't read every book and we don't read every genre. We try to read, or at least I know I try to read as widely across genres as I can. But like I work with children, teens, and adults. So it's hard to read across every genre for every age group. I mean, I would have to read like a book every day to even like hit the tip of the iceberg.
Sometimes you do.
Sometimes I do.
Mythical
And
season.
yes, the Milwaukee County Teen Book Award season. I have piles of books at home of all sorts of genres that are all just for teens. And because I am the teen librarian, that is where I tend to focus most of my wider reading because that is who I'm here to serve. I mean, I'm here to serve everybody, but that is what I'm paid. It's like my job, my title is young adult librarian. So that is the level that I read the most across. And then when I'm talking to kids, a lot of times I'll ask them about like, the level of book that they're looking for and whether they want like also adults, I'll ask whether they want a graphic novel or like, a print book. And yeah, so what I mean for the kids with level, I'm not talking about like Lexiles or the Fontes and Pinnell thing. I'm talking about like, whether they
Those
are
terms are way over my head. Thank you.
that's fine, but parents know what I'm talking about. Teachers know what I'm talking about. If your kid, is in school, you know that they're supposed to be at a certain lexile or whatever. Um, I don't really ask kids about that stuff because that stuff I don't think is as relevant for pleasure reading as, more the general like, are you reading picture books? Are you reading early readers? Are you reading chapter books? Like what are you reading? What's your capacity for the amount of words on a page, the type of vocabulary, and then from that, I will give them a lot of books. Um, I like to give children like 5 books. Um, and then they can go and read the back of the jacket and then I one thing that I've taught kids is the 5 finger rule. So like a lot of kids will be like, "Well, this book seems really hard for me." And I'm like, "If it seems too hard for you, you can always return it. You don't have to finish reading it." But if they look at the book beforehand, the 5 finger rule is like if there's 5 words, that are like too hard for them to understand or sound out or try to figure out what they mean. The book might be too hard for them, but if they feel like there's a lot of kids who with things like Harry Potter, got super excited, the Percy Jackson series, get super excited about them and they're like second graders and they want to read it already. And it's like, and if they want to try it, I'm like, go for it because, you know, kids push themselves more and learn more when they have a genuine interest, just like, you did with Dungeons and Dragons.
Mhm.
And so even though it's not at their like Lexile level or whatever, or at their grade level, I think it's good for kids to push themselves. But they don't have to push themselves. If they are in second grade and they want to, read early readers and that's like their thing, they like the Elephant and Piggy series, go for it. Like if you're reading for pleasure, you're reading, great. Um so yeah, those are a lot of the things that I'll ask. Also, one thing that I ask too is a lot with like whether people are more into plot-driven stories versus character-driven stories. Or, because I feel like I get a lot of people who come in asking for mysteries and kind of getting a sense of like, is it that, you like the detective and you like say like a Janet Ivanovich series that has this she has a series that has this protagonist called Stephanie Plum and she's like this like sassy lady detective, and so a lot of people are drawn to that because of the character. um or like the Bones series by Kathy Reichs, which was turned into a TV series with Temperance Brennan and can't remember the name of her partner, the FBI guy. But some people are like those series because they like the characters, but then there's other people who like those series because they like that it's like an FBI procedural, or they like that it's, like a private investigator type of thing. Um, so there's like I said, different people like books for different reasons, and so these are the questions that we ask to get the information so that then we are able to recommend what you want.
I as you were talking about that, I had this very funny image. And no, this is not a true story, but this is a very funny image of some kid like talking to you, and you like go to hand them the Fellowship of the Ring, and they're looking at it, and the words are too big, and you're like, well, here's this Charles Bukowski novel.
No, I would not do that. Though I did have a kid recently who looked like they were like in third grade, and we don't do the job of the parents. Like, so if your third grader comes in and asks me for a Stephen King novel, I will show them where the Stephen King novels are. That's my job. Um, I was reading Stephen King in like fourth grade, and my parents were fine with it. Every parent is different. Every parent has different rules. Every parent, if that's what your kid asks for, that's what we'll give them, unless you're with them, and then you can say to them, "No, I don't want you reading this." But so yeah, I had a kid come in a few weeks ago, and she was looking for scary stories. And I was like, okay. And I was like, what, like, do you have an author in mind? And she was like, Stephen King. And this was like a third grade. And I'm like, okay. So we walked over to the fiction area and she saw the Stephen King books and she looked at them and her eyes got like real big, like, oh my God, these books are gigantic. And I was
And
like,
there's a lot of them.
and there's a lot of them. And I was like, "Do these seem like they'd be too long and, like, intimidating?" And she was like, "Yes." And so I took her back to the children's room and got her a bunch of, like, ghost stories by, like, Mary Downing Hahn, and then I also got her a couple of, like, ghost stories from the teen area. Like, there's this, like, Kendare Blake book called, like, Anna Dressed in Blood or something, and it's got, like, this ghost lady, and I've read it before, and it's whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and so but she was, like, super into that, and her dad was with her, and her dad was like when we went over to look at the Stephen King, he's like, "Are you sure you wanna read these?" And she's like, "Yeah." And then, like but then she, like, opened one of them, and she looked like, kind of like, "This is a lot." And so then when I grabbed the other books for her, her dad was like, These seem much better." And, and her dad was there, and her dad was there to guide things and that's good. Um, but yeah, so we'll ask you questions about what you want. And so she wanted horror, she wanted, stuff that was scary. And the thing is different things are scary to different people. It's like
Mm,
what is scary to one person is not scary to another person. I know people who have come to me who are like, Harry Potter is terrifying. And I know people who have come to me who are like, Harry Potter is not scary, and I need something scarier. And every child is different, every child, every person, every adult. Same with adults, like, I've got people like that sometimes I'll ask questions to kind of get a better sense of what you deem too violent or what you deem because it's like, I watch things that some people are like, "How can you watch that?"
yeah.
I've watched the TV series The Boys, and I've watched, you and I have watched Game of Thrones together and things like that, and that's fine, that's what we like, but, there are other people who deem those things too violent, and that's fine too, and then there are some people, who, are even more sensitive about the amount like, certain things that I don't consider as violent, they consider violent, and so I try to get that information from people because I wanna give you something that you wanna read.
Yeah.
Um
And it's interesting how being trained, how you reacted to a situation differed than how I would. A kid walked over and if their eyes got real big, I would have been like, "Well, here, take Night or Skeleton Crew because both of these are short story books, and so you'll be able to like get through it easier." Instead of me being like, "Oh, maybe we should take you over to the Goosebumps." Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, so with we talked about how you come to your conclusions. Was
Mhm,
there anything else? I mean, you took a class.
mhm.
Is there anything in the training from the class that would be of interest to the people at large?
I mean, I don't know how much of interest. I mean, I can get into lots of detail about how Reader's Advisory works. I know like a lot of stuff that I do is I in order for me to remember, because I can't, there's no way I could remember every single book that I've read. I mean, I read an average of at least 52 books a year, if not more. And so I keep track of everything on Goodreads, but there are other like aggregators that you can keep track of what you've been reading on. And so I used to use Library Thing before I use Goodreads, and you can tag your books. So I tag my books with every single tag that I can think of that is something that people ask me for regularly. So for a while there, when vampire books were really popular, I had like tagged all my vampire books so that like somebody came and was like, I'm looking for a vampire book. All I had to do was go into my Goodreads account, click on the vampire tag, and everything that I'd read recently would pop up that I could be like, "You might like this, you might like this. What did you like about this book?" And I'd have other tags in there because sometimes some of them are like mysteries involving vampires. Some of them were like comedies, like Christopher Moore like wrote like what is it? You Suck, I think is one of the books that he wrote. That's like this like comedy about like a guy who meets a girl at a bar and like becomes a vampire and then like how his life is like terrible afterwards, but it's like a dark comedy.
Yeah.
So that's what Christopher Moore writes. And then, there was also like romance, like the Parasol Protected series that I told you about, where there's like vampires and werewolves and all these different creatures, and then there were like mysteries involving. So I had them all tagged so that, if people are like this, I'm looking for this with vampires, then I could be like, well, this book is for you, or this book is for you, or this book is for you.
Yeah. And
Um,
and if you're wondering, the reason why Lisa wears sweaters at work is because she has all of these written on her arm.
If
Um,
I had them all tattooed on my body, I'd look like the guy from Memento.
yes, exactly.
I'd run
Um,
out of I need, like, other bodies to keep filling them in.
all right, this has gotten creepy. So which takes us back to us liking the grim dark style of books and movies. So anyways, so
So I guess that's a good transition to the recommendations from my regular who used to recommend horror movies to me, and I've
yes.
recommended a few to him as well.
So we've talked about a couple of their recommendations in the past. What
Mhm.
were some of the things that we've talked about?
So in the past, things that he has recommended are Ready or Not, which was a horror movie about a woman who marries into a family that plays a lot of board games, and they own like a board game company. And in order to be a member of the family, she has to go through this like trial.
After the wedding, that night at like midnight, they
They
all
they they
converge to play a game, and the game drawn could be something completely innocent,
like
like something
Scrabble.
cheesy, yeah,
Yes.
um, or
It could be this, like, hunt where, like, they have to chase her down and kill her.
yeah,
But it was a good movie. He also recommended The Hunt, which was the other horror movie that was about a bunch of liberal people kidnapping a bunch of Republican people from the South and then literally hunting them, and killing them and for sport, which was a very interesting political movie. And then recently, which we have not talked about, he recommended Spontaneous, and we just watched that a couple nights ago, which is a movie about a bunch of high schoolers who suddenly start exploding, and the main character doesn't know why it's happening and is trying to make sense of it all. And it's kind of like a story about how life doesn't make sense and how people don't deserve the horrible things that happen to them, but how you should just enjoy your life as much as you can.
yeah. To set it up a little further, essentially, they show a bunch of kids in class, and they're listening to the teacher speak. And there's the usual, like, one kid's making eyes at another kid, and somebody's whispering, or whatever. And then all of a sudden there's like an explosion of blood, and one of the students just liquefies,
Yeah.
and they have no idea why this is happening. And so when it happens to one person, okay, it's a shock and it's a tragedy. When it happens to another person, then it's like, okay, what is wrong? What is the connection between these two students? And then it happens again, and then it happens again. And so it explores both how like the government and how these things are handled, would be handled, but
Mhm.
but also it's that deep emotion, because it focuses on one character,
Yeah, and
mainly.
her boyfriend,
Yeah.
and it's kind of a love story, and it also focuses on grief a lot and the process of grief. And the main character is played by Catherine Langford, who was the main character on 13 Reasons Why,
Mhm.
um, and she does a really good job. Yeah.
So talking about patron recommendations, I guess, talk to me about that relationship. I was going
Go
to say
ahead.
we've watched at least, I feel like it's been more than 3 movies recommended by this patron. So continue.
But yeah, he and I, like we just like to talk about, movies and stuff, and so he comes by and we'll talk about other things too, but we've gotten to a point where we've gotten to understand kind of what each other likes. And I recommended things to him as well. And so like among the things that I recommended to him were Black Panther. I recommended Parasite to him. At first he was hesitant because he doesn't like to read subtitles, but then I was like, this movie's worth it. You should read subtitles for this movie.
Mhm.
And part of the reason that I pushed that movie too is because I had recommended Snowpiercer to him, which was directed by the same guy who directed Parasite, and he really liked Snowpiercer, and so I was like, that's how I got him to watch Parasite. Because I was like, well, if you liked Snowpiercer, this is the same director, so like, it's worth a watch. I mean, yes, you will have to read subtitles. Yes, I know that you find that annoying, but it's worth it. And then
Yeah,
he came back and he was like, yeah, I liked it. So, sometimes it's cool because like he's gotten me to try different new things. I've gotten him to try different new things through our recommendations.
Yeah, and I would like to interject that Snowpiercer is one of my favorite movies of the last 15 years. And anybody that's like, oh, it's by the person that directed Parasite. Oh, and it's one of your favorites. It's also a grimdark movie. Just putting that out there. But I loved it.
Yes, it's a movie about global warming has taken over, and everybody who's still alive lives on a train that's constantly going around the earth until like things get livable again outside of the train. And the train,
It's a microcosm created within a train in order to preserve humanity.
yeah, and the train is broken down by class with like certain cars being for the poor and certain cars being for the upper class, and the distinctions between the cars are just wow. And you learn a lot of gross, creepy things along the way. But it's just a really good movie.
And what's her name? What's her name?
The Kate Blanchett. Is that who you're thinking about?
No, Snowpiercer lady.
Snowpiercer lady.
Tilda Swinton.
Oh, yeah, that's it. Yeah, I confuse Kate Blanchett and Tilda Swinton. They both are kind of very distinctive looking ladies.
Yes, but yeah, Tilda Swinton is in it, and she is fantastic.
Yeah, she is very good in it.
But yeah, and Snowpiercer, fantastic movie, is based upon Snowpiercer, the graphic novel.
Yeah, which is it's an adult graphic novel, not a children's graphic novel. Yeah, just want to make that.
Yes.
But yeah, and then so he and I talk movies a lot, and I've gotten a lot of good recommendations from him, and I've given him a lot of recommendations. Then I have another patron who, she and I mostly recommend restaurants to each other, but occasionally we also recommend movies to each other. She is very interested in like independent films, and so she recommended, what was that movie called? She recommended a movie to me that ended up being pretty good. It was about the two Jewish women who are in love with each other.
Yes.
And it had Rachel Weisz. Is that her name? And then I recommended to her because she, sometimes she'll be like, I just, want. She likes
Disobedience.
Yeah, Disobedience. She recommended Disobedience to me, and we watched that, and I really liked it. And she's recommended a few other films to me because before the pandemic, she was somebody who would often go to the Downer and to the Oriental and just, see a lot of those independent films. And, I know what she likes. And so sometimes, especially during the pandemic, she's a senior citizen, and she would call and like now still she doesn't come into the library really. She gets things via curbside, and so she'll call and be like, I'm looking for some movies to watch because that's how she likes to spend her time. And so sometimes she'll have certain titles in mind, and other times she won't know, and she's just like, just pick like 5 of them for me. And so I've picked a bunch of them for her, and I tend to try to like I'll pick like some indie films for her, but then I also know that she likes sometimes she wants to go back to like Katharine Hepburn movies and Audrey Hepburn movies and some of those Cary Grant older films. So I'll pick some of my favorites for her, and it was funny because I picked Bringing Up Baby for her, which is one of my favorite Katharine Hepburn films, and she'd seen it before, but she's like, "It's been so long since I watched this one, and it was so good. I forgot about how good it was," And, yeah, that was good to hear. And then the teens will recommend a lot of stuff to me. The teens tend to recommend a lot of graphic novels to me. I've had teens recommended Noelle Stevenson, who did Nimona, and I really liked Nimona, and that got me to watch the She-Ra show on Netflix, because Noelle Stevenson was involved with that. A lot of teens will recommend a lot of manga to me and a lot of anime, so a lot of the anime that I've watched has been because of the teens. They'll also recommend a lot of web comics to me because a lot of them read a lot of web comics, and so I'll read a lot of that stuff, and that helps me in selecting stuff for our collection because then I get an idea of what they like to read. So then when I'm looking at book reviews for, the graphic novels or the manga that we have here, or the anime or things like that, I have a better idea of what it is that people are looking for. And because we'll talk about it, I'll be like, oh, like, what did you like about it? And then they'll be like, I like this. And then they're like, what did you like about it? And I'll be like, I like this, but I get an idea of what it is that they liked about it, whether, it's the setting, the characters, like all the things that I mentioned earlier in this episode. So
Quick funny story. I didn't have any interest in seeing the musical Hamilton until I was a chaperone for a library program, and I was like, why are teenagers obsessed with this musical? They're all singing every song and like, jumping around on the CD and putting on different songs and singing along with it. I'm like, this is nothing like my teenage experience where I was listening to Judas Priest and Iron Maiden. I couldn't wrap my head around kids being super stoked on a musical.
Mhm.
And
Also, they were not jumping around on the CDs. CDs are for old people. They were jumping around on like YouTube or something.
Sorry, dating myself. But regardless, it's really their interest that made me like, maybe I need to see this Hamilton thing, and it was great.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, and so I think it's important to also to listen to our patrons' recommendations. So I have a lot of patrons recommend things to me. Sometimes I listen to the recommendations. Sometimes I don't. I will admit it because I do not have time to read all of the books. But some of the ones that have been recommended to me are things that I never would have picked up on my own that I really enjoyed. So like one book that a lot of people were reading for a while there was Where the Crawdads Sing, and I'm trying to remember who the author is of that one, but it's like this mystery that takes place in the South about this woman who lives out in nature, and it's not something that I would have picked up on my own, but
Delia Owens.
Delia Owens.
Sorry.
Yeah, you're fine. Delia Owens, and so it's something that I wouldn't have picked up on my own, but I had so many people be like, "Have you read this? This is so great!" And it was always checked out, so I had like an excuse to be like, "No, I haven't read it yet." But so many people were like, "Have you read this? This is so great!" That finally I was like, "You know what? I'm gonna read it." And so I actually listened to the audiobook, really enjoyed it, and I'm also in the camp of, "Have you read this? This is so great!" um, yeah, so same with like Girl on the Train and what was the other one? Gone Girl. Both of those were also ones that I don't normally pick up mystery thriller books. I like them. I used to read a lot of them when I was younger. Like in 7th and 8th grade, I was like obsessed with Agatha Christie. But yeah, I tend to like more speculative fiction now, so I don't read them as much, but every once in a while, somebody will be like, "This is great," or they'll have a lot of people recommend it to me. But yeah, one thing I'll be honest about, if you recommend like political autobiographies to me, I probably will not read them. I'm not a big autobiography person. I prefer to watch documentaries about people than to like read books about people. But I do like nonfiction, and I like sharing nonfiction with people, and I like the things that people have shared with me. Because I've had several people recommend various nonfiction books to me, like the Carlo Rovelli Seven Principles of Physics was something that somebody recommended to me, and I really enjoyed that book. And it broke down the seven principles of physics in this really easy to understand way.
Was the author of Gone Girl, was that the book that was written
In Chicago, yes, that you moved that lady when we lived in Chicago. Nick used to work for a moving company, and he got to move Gillian Flynn from one house to another house.
No, well, it was that we were setting up the staging for that house. We didn't move her stuff.
Okay, I thought you were moving her stuff.
No,
because he worked for a moving company, and then he worked for a staging company. And for those who don't know, the staging company is like a company that like rich people hire to like put furniture in the house so that when you're selling your house, like it looks nice because like they've had an interior decorator like set up everything to make it look like how if this were your dream home, this is what the furniture would look like and everything. And so he worked for a staging company where he would help. He was like the warehouse manager and had the guys move stuff around. But
yeah, and I it's funny because this house that Gone Girl was written in was only like 10 blocks from where we lived. Yet I mean the house was just absolutely gorgeous, and it had all of its vintage features, and it still had like a gorgeous library.
Yeah, you sent me a picture now. It's like, ooh, that's cool. I wish I had a library in my house.
That, and they had one of the like old style toilets where the water tank was like
oh
6
yeah, up
feet
high.
up the wall.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I was like, oh, that's crazy. But yeah, that was a neat little thing, and I thought about it just recently because I was purging pictures from my phone, and I was like, oh, there's pictures from that house. But yeah, do you think we've covered patron recommendations and readers advisory thoroughly enough?
I think so. There's always more to to answer. If people have more questions about how Readers Advisory works, you can always ask us. Librarians are happy to answer. But also, yeah, like one thing that I'd like to share is, I know sometimes it seems like we're taking a long time when you come up to us and ask us, like, I want a good book to read. What do you recommend? Some of you might be like, why is she asking me all these annoying questions? This is why I ask you all these annoying questions. This is I ask you them to help you to find something that you would actually like to read, because I don't want to just hand you some random book. I want to hand you something that you might like, because that's my job.
Yep.
And so yeah, so if it takes a little bit longer, it might be because it's an area where one of us doesn't read as much. Like I said, I love speculative fiction, and I read a lot of young adults. So like, sometimes my colleagues will come and grab me if they're having trouble recommending young adult stuff to teens. And some of my other colleagues are more into things like reading about sports, or reading about, reading mysteries, or those kind of things. And so I will come and grab them if they're around, and see if they can help. But yeah, so if we're taking a little bit longer than you would like, it's not to annoy you. It is because we are trying to find a book that suits you, and we're trying, and we can't read everything in the library, so we can't. I wish that we were like these magic computers where we could just like pull anything out of our head. And also, for some reason, I don't know why, and I know that this happens to a lot of other librarians too, but like when somebody's like, "What's a good book that you read recently?" Whenever somebody asks me that question, my mind immediately goes completely blank, and I'm just like, "What is a good book that I've read recently? I don't know." And
And
then as soon
and
as they walk away, then I've got like 10 of them in my head, and I'm like, "Dang, why didn't I think of those while that person was standing right here in front of me?"
if only you could have rolled up your sleeve to show that they were all written on your arm.
I'm not the memento guy. All
But
right.
I was just going to say, you made me think about how when I worked for Games Workshop, how I would have try and within 3 questions get to the heart of what the person was looking for, and also how irritated, like, no matter how many open-ended questions I ask to try and pull what they want out of them.
Mhm.
Some people, they feel that sales vibe, and they're just like, even if they ask me the question first, sometimes, yes, I start asking the questions, and they start to
Yeah.
shut down.
Yeah, yeah.
So I know.
Yeah, and I don't get that as much at the& as I did when I worked at Barnes& and Noble. But I do get it a little bit with the kids, like the middle schoolers and the high schoolers sometimes get a little shy around me,
Yeah.
or in general with adults, and so sometimes that's a struggle. But then I'm like I said, that's where I read widely. So then that's why I'm like, you might like this and this and this and this and this. And then sometimes I feel bad because I'm like, I just overwhelmed this child with like 10 books, and they're like, what the hell is wrong with this lady? But
If I came home with 6 books, I would probably read 0, because I would be like, I don't even know which one I want to start with.
yeah,
Um,
well, I see a lot of the kids. So a lot of the kids, I think a lot of the kids, I don't know that they appreciate it, but it works, because I see a lot of the kids take all like 10 books to a table, look at them, and then I see them walk away with like 1 or 2. And if they walk away with 1 or 2, I feel like I did a good job.
you won.
When they walk away with nothing, then I feel sad inside. But that
I
doesn't happen very often.
I can picture that. And I wish that the podcast was broadcast on video, because if you could have seen Lisa when she said, and here, take this and this and this and this, and she throwing her arms around because she is so excited to be grabbing fictitious books off of the shelf. Yes,
Yes.
that is a passionate librarian.
This might be the only time I curse on the podcast, but it reminds me of that Parks and Rec episode where they call the librarians punk ass book jockeys. And I'm like,
Yes,
yes, that is me.
indeed.
All
So
right.
on that
On
note,
that note, thank you for listening. We hope you have enjoyed the show. If you have any questions for us, email us at shoredstacks@gmail.com. We always love to hear from you. We hope to go into our genre dive next week. So I will be talking trip hop, and Nick will be talking mystery. Or not next week, the week, next episode, the week after. As always, thanks for listening, and be well. The Shorewood Stacks is produced and recorded by Lisa Quintero and Nick Barron for the Shorewood Public Library. Music for the show is by Kevin MacLeod and is called Ice Flow and can be found on incompetech.com.